In this video, we're discussing hair. Single drawn, double drawn, single donor, and what it all means. This is what single drawn hair looks like. When hair is cut from the donor, it's bound, and it's either bound by a twine or a really thick thread or rubber bands. Sometimes along the length of a bundle or a ponytail of hair, as we call them, it's bound multiple times to make sure none of the hair slips out. But the hair is bound and then it's cut in just one swift motion. The hair is very blunt at the top and it tends to be thin at the ends. Now, donor hair varies from one donor to the next. Sometimes donor hair can be fuller at the tips, but for the most part, it ends up being thin at the tips. Double drawn hair is hair that is drawn so that all of the hair in a bundle is the same length. Now, we don't really source double drawn hair, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The hair that you see in this photograph is not truly double drawn, but it's close to it. And it basically means that there's not as much short hair because it's all drawn out. Now, when you saw the ponytail, and I'll go back to this. One weft, for example, and it's all double drawn. The chances are you can have 8 to 10 donors on average. Sometimes it's fewer because some people have fuller hair from root to tip, but it all varies. Now, this bundle that you're looking at in this picture is not double drawn, but this is how double drawn hair looks at the tips. It's pretty even at the tips. This is still single drawn hair. It just has a low amount of shorter hairs, and you'll see later in the video how that looks. The ends are trimmed to look even. Here are the bundles for comparison. So on the left you see the first bundle, the first photograph of a ponytail that you saw, single drawn Indian hair. In the middle you see single drawn Indonesian hair, and you can see that there's quite a bit of short hair in that bundle. And then on the right, that's Mongolian hair. It's still single drawn, but it just doesn't have as much short hair, and so it's close. It's very close to what double drawn hair looks like. We also get a lot of questions about the density, and sometimes when people want a fuller length at the tips, they keep going higher and higher on the density, and it's not always the density. For example, we had a unit for a client that was colored by a stylist, and the stylist asked repeatedly, she wasn't concerned about the density because it seemed kind of thin. Was she concerned about the density? She asked a few times, and I said, you know, it's not the density, because density refers to the volume of hair, how much hair is on a unit. Density doesn't refer to whether the hair is single drawn, double drawn, how much short hair is in the unit versus long hair. So if you have hair from a donor that has a lot of short hair, as you can see in this lighter color sample of Indonesian hair, even at the same density, because the density is from the root, it's going to appear much, much, much thinner than the Mongolian hair on the right. So these are things to think about when you're thinking about even a weft. The Mongolian hair on the right is wefted, or a full lace unit, because sometimes people try to fix a problem with density, and that's really not what they need to fix. They need to make sure that they have a lot more longer hair in the unit, especially if you're going for a lot of layers. That is not always an issue of density, and sometimes people will go high on the density and still not quite get the look of the layers because it's thinner at the tips, because that wasn't what needed to be for the look that they were going for. So keep that in mind. Another thing that we have on our site is single donor hair, which basically means that the hair comes in on the ponytails like you see, and we keep those ponytails together, and we make a unit from the same donor. Sometimes, if the density needs to be full, or just for certain types of hair, it may be a second donor. In really high density cases, there may be a third donor. That doesn't happen that much. Most of the time, two donors is enough. When we blend the hair, 2 donors is enough to make a full unit. And some people wonder, is that better? Is that worse? Is it worth it? Because it does cost more. And whether or not it's worth it really depends upon what you're going for. When we make a virgin hair unit and that hair is completely unprocessed, we're not processing it for curl, texture, or anything like that, we tend to keep the number of donors down to 1 or 2 or 3 at the most, like I said previously. And the reason is when you're wearing the hair in its natural state and you're mixing 2, 3 different heads of hair, it can get kind of weird if you go further than that, because every head of hair is different. And when you get the hair in and you blend it, you try to pick hair that's just a lot like the hair you already have. You try to get it as identical as you possibly can, because if it's not, then you can end up with hair that behaves differently than the rest of the hair. I hope you can understand that, because when I say it that way, it can make a lot of sense. Now, once the unit has been processed, for example, for an African American texture or a curl, that kind of balances it out a little bit. But even still, things can creep up with that, but that's not such a big deal, because that's going to happen with any kind of hair. But when you get virgin hair, you do want to try to keep the blending of bundles to the minimal level that you can. Or you just have to make sure that the hair is so identical. It's just as close as you can possibly get it to the rest of the hair, or you end up with the situation of having mixed textures and all this different stuff going on. So that's why we do the single donor hair. We handpick the hair, we blend it if we have to. Sometimes we don't. And really, I really do mean this. Sometimes someone's hair, there's so much hair on their head that we don't have to blend it. And then sometimes one donor has so much hair that it can make 1.5 units, and then the leftover hair gets blended with something else to make another unit. And so we sort the hair and we wrap it up, and then each bundle that we've organized gets made into a unit. That's something that not everyone can appreciate. So whether or not that's for you, if it's your first unit, probably not. But if you've been into hair and you've been wearing hair for a while and you have a sincere appreciation for quality hair, then that's when you may want to consider that. And especially if you're going for a virgin, wavy or curly texture, because virgin straight hair, really similar. Virgin curly and wavy hair can be totally different depending upon the donor. So before we wrap up this video, there's one more thing I want to show you. This is where you can see the short hair issue. So this is the same Mongolian hair that I showed you before, And I said, we don't have double drawn hair, but this is close. And you can see here. I don't know if you can see the short hairs popping out, but that's the easiest way to see the short hair is to fold it over. And then you'll see the short hair sticking out. Now I'm going to show you the Indonesian hair, and you can really see it there. Now you see the difference? Go back, go there. Look at that. Isn't that something? So that's why when you're looking for fullness in a unit, that's the kind of thing that matters. Now your question to us probably is, does that affect the cost? Oh yeah, it affects the cost. And that's why sometimes when you see units on our website that seem like they're really expensive, part of that is the reason. Dealing with the issue of how much short hair versus long hair is in any given bundle of hair is not something that is easily communicated to the average consumer. So it kind of makes it confusing to put all of that in the description. But when we make them, we know. So if there is a unit with more longer hair than short hair, it's a more expensive unit. It just is. One of the reasons is because the hair itself was more expensive at sourcing. The other reason is sometimes all of that short hair, it's just sorted out. Because if it were all ventilated like that, the unit wouldn't look that good. So when you're sorting out all that short hair, that's hair that you can't really use. It has to be demoted to baby hair. And so it affects the cost of the finished product. So I hope that gives you a really good understanding about hair and basically this, the single drawn, the double drawn, the length, the amount of short hair versus long hair. And I hope you have found that to be really educational and informational, because this is something that is pretty across the board. This is not specific to Zara Wigs. This is a hair sourcing and processing issue, period. So this information should be really useful to you. You can always call us if you have questions, and we'll be happy to explain further. Thanks.